The story of the P-47 Thunderbolt begins not in the skies of Europe, but in the drawing rooms and factories of the United States in the late 1930s. At a time when war loomed across the Atlantic, the United States Army Air Corps recognized the urgent need for a new fighter and aircraft that could match or surpass the fighters emerging from Germany, Italy, and Japan. The brief was daunting. They wanted a plane that combines speed, firepower, range, and durability, capable of escorting bombers on long missions deep into enemy territory, while also engaging in air-to-air combat. Republic Aviation, a relatively small company in Farmingdale, New York, took on the challenge. Led by Alexander Kartveli, a brilliant aeronautical engineer who had emigrated from Georgia, the team envisioned a fighter that broke from traditional designs. Kartveli was determined to create a plane that could survive the unforgiving realities of combat. Unlike the sleek, lightweight fighters popular in Europe, his design would prioritize strength over agility and aircraft that could endure punishment, that would destroy lesser machines. The first prototype, designated the XP-47B, rolled out in May 1941. It was a hulking machine by contemporary standards. The fuselage was wide and sturdy, the wings broad enough to carry massive amounts of fuel and armament, and the radial engine of Pratt Whitney R-2800 was one of the most powerful ever built at the time, producing nearly 2,000 horsepower. Its cockpit was armored, and the self-sealing fuel tanks promised that even when pierced by enemy fire, the aircraft would not ignite in flames. The engineers affectionately or sometimes wearily referred to it as the Jug, a nickname that would later capture both its bulk and its resilience. Early pilots were initially skeptical. "It's a beast," one test pilot reportedly said after his first flight. "It doesn't turn like the Spitfire, it doesn't climb like the Messerschmitt, but it can take a hit and still keep going. If it ever reaches combat, it's going to be terrifying." Testing was grueling. Pilots pushed the XP-47B to its limits, examining every aspect of performance: climb rate, dive speed, maneuverability, and endurance. During one test, a prototype dove at over 500 miles per hour, astonishing for the era, and the plane responded without structural failure. Engineers documented every vibration, every flex in the airframe, ensuring that the aircraft could survive the stresses of real combat. As the design matured, production was authorized, and Republic Aviation's factories buzzed with activity. Workers often put in 12-hour shifts, assembling wings, riveting fuselages, and meticulously calibrating engines. Each aircraft was a testament to human ingenuity and determination, an industrial miracle born of urgency and fear of what war might bring. But the P-47's design philosophy was controversial. Critics in the military questioned whether a heavy, less maneuverable plane could succeed against nimble enemy fighters. The engineers and early pilots argued that durability and firepower would outweigh agility, and history would ultimately prove them right. The Jug was not designed to dance gracefully in dogfights. It was designed to dominate through resilience, speed in dives, and sheer destructive capability. By 1942, production had begun in earnest. The United States was now fully committed to the war, and the Thunderbolt would soon be tested in the most unforgiving theater imaginable: the skies over Europe. Pilots who would fly the Thunderbolt for the first time were often awestruck by its size and power. Cadet John "Johnny" Miller, arriving at an advanced training base in 1942, described his first impression: "When I walked up to the plane, it felt like it could crush a car. The engine was massive, the fuselage wide, and the cockpit seemed like a small room inside a tank. I thought, how can this thing fly? But when I took her up, she soared, smooth, powerful, and steady like a beast that knew its own strength, even before combat." The Jug was proving itself remarkable. Test flights showed that it could dive faster than any other fighter of the era, its radial engine screaming in a controlled fury as it gained speed. Its 8.50 caliber Browning machine guns were devastating on paper, and later in the war, they would earn a reputation for cutting enemy aircraft to shreds in seconds. As the first production P-47s left the factories, the United States Army Air Forces prepared to deploy them to Europe. The pilots would take these massive planes across the Atlantic, flying from England to the front lines of the conflict. The Jug was ready to meet its ultimate test, combat against the Luftwaffe over hostile skies. In the face of flak, enemy fighters, and the unforgiving demands of war. And so, the stage was set. A new kind of fighter had emerged, not elegant, not graceful, but relentless, indestructible, and destined to dominate the skies over Europe. The era of the P-47 Thunderbolt had begun. By 1942, P-47 Thunderbolts were rolling out of Republic Aviation's factories in New York at an unprecedented pace. Each aircraft was meticulously assembled, a combination of raw power, precision engineering, and human effort. Workers, often exhausted from long shifts, treated each Jug as if it were a living creature, understanding that their work would directly influence the survival of the men who would fly it. Every rivet, every engine test, every control check mattered. There was no room for error. The logistics of transporting these massive planes to the European theater were a feat in themselves. Pilots were flown from the United States to England, often in formation, navigating long stretches of ocean with the constant threat of mechanical failure or enemy patrols. Lieutenant Henry Hank Thompson recalled his first transatlantic flight. "I remember staring at the ocean for hours, the wings cutting through clouds, wondering if the engine would hold. The Jug was heavy, yes, but it was steady. She never faltered once, and when we finally saw the English coastline, it felt like we'd been reborn into another world, one of war, sky, and fire." Arriving in England, the pilots were assigned to various bases in the south, from which they would launch missions deep into occupied Europe. The early days were filled with intense training, learning the quirks of the aircraft, mastering formation flying, and coordinating with bomber units. Unlike the smaller, more agile fighters some had flown in training, the Thunderbolt demanded respect. Its size made tight maneuvers more challenging, but its speed and a dive endurance and devastating armament made it an asset that could change the outcome of any engagement. The first missions were nerve-wracking. Pilots escorted bomber formations over France, encountering anti-aircraft fire, unpredictable weather, and the ever-present threat of Luftwaffe fighters. Many young men learned quickly that survival depended on knowing the Jug's strengths and its limitations. Lieutenant James McAllister described his initial sorties. "The first time we flew over occupied France, my hands were shaking. The bombers were ahead, flak was popping around us, and enemy fighters were hunting us. I kept thinking about the Jug, how she could dive like a rocket, take hits that would destroy others, and still bring me home. And she did. Every flight after that, I trusted her with my life." Ground crews in England played an equally vital role. Mechanics worked tirelessly, repairing battle damage, tuning engines, and preparing aircraft for the next sortie. They became the unsung heroes of the campaign, their expertise ensuring that every pilot had a fighting chance. One famous incident involved a Thunderbolt returning from a mission. With nearly half its wings shot away, the crew patched it overnight, and the next morning, the plane was back in the air, a testament to both engineering and human determination. Early combat missions also revealed the versatility of the P-47. While primarily designed as a high-altitude escort fighter, the Thunderbolt's ability to carry bombs and rockets allowed it to strike ground targets with devastating effect. Pilots began experimenting with strafing runs on railways, supply convoys, and small enemy installations. Lieutenant Helen Hawk Anderson recounted one of her first such missions. "We flew low over a supply depot, and I could see trucks lining up like ants below. I dropped my bombs, then strafed with the 8 machine guns. The destruction was immediate. Flak was everywhere, but the Jug shrugged it off. Flying that plane made you feel unstoppable, but also incredibly aware of the stakes. One mistake could end your life." These early missions forged a new type of fighter pilot, one who relied on discipline, courage, and trust in his machine. Unlike the nimble, turn-and-burn dogfights of other aircraft, the P-47 demanded planning, precision, and the ability to exploit speed and firepower. Pilots learned to climb above the enemy, dive with incredible velocity, and use the Jug's heavy guns to decisive effect. By late 1943, the P-47 had proven itself in the European skies. Pilots returned with stories of miraculous survivals, planes riddled with flak, rudders nearly destroyed, yet still returning to base. These tales spread among the ranks, building a legend even before the Thunderbolt would face its greatest tests over Normandy. And the heart of Germany, the stage was set. The P-47 was no longer just a prototype or a test plane, it was a combat-proven juggernaut, ready to dominate the skies, shape the battlefield, and etch its place in the annals of World War II aviation history. The first months of 1943 marked the P-47 Thunderbolt's baptism of fire over Europe. While its development and early training had proven its capabilities, true combat would test both the plane and its pilots in ways no simulation could replicate. The skies over France, Belgium, and the Low Countries became proving grounds where steel met skill, courage faced danger, and the Jug would carve its legend. Pilots assigned to the 8 Fighter Command quickly learned that the Thunderbolt was unlike any aircraft they had flown before. Its sheer size made it less agile than German fighters such as the Messerschmitt Bf 109 or the Focke-Wulf Fw 190, but its armament, speed and dives, and unmatched durability gave it unique advantages. Early dogfights often began with the pilots climbing above the bomber formations, scanning the skies for enemy aircraft. Once spotted, the Thunderbolt's tactics were simple but effective. Use altitude for a speed advantage, dive like a meteor, and unleash a torrent of .50 caliber machine gun fire. One of the first pilots to fly the Thunderbolt in combat, Lieutenant James McAllister, described his experience over the Ruhr Valley. We were escorting a formation of B-17s, the sky alive with tracer fire and flak bursts. Suddenly, 3 Me-109s came at the bombers from above. I dove, guns blazing. The first burst tore through the lead fighter's fuselage, and the other two turned and fled. I couldn't believe how resilient the Jug felt, pummeled by flak and enemy fire, yet flying steady and true. I knew right then that this plane wasn't just a fighter. It was a fortress with wings. The Thunderbolt's nickname, the Flying Tank, was earned in these early missions. Pilots returned from sorties with aircraft riddled by enemy fire, sometimes missing sections of wing or control surfaces, yet still capable of landing safely. Stories spread quickly, boosting morale among Allied airmen while intimidating enemy pilots. Ground crews became adept at patching the Jugs, sometimes repairing near-catastrophic damage in hours so the aircraft could fly again the same day. Combat was relentless. Pilots faced multiple sorties per day, navigating flak-heavy skies while escorting bombers on missions deep into Germany. The P-47's high-altitude performance was exceptional. It could climb quickly to meet attacking fighters and dive with incredible speed without risking structural failure, a deadly combination for German aircraft that relied on agility and tight turning. Dogfights. Lieutenant Robert Steele recalled an early engagement over Kassel. A formation of Me-109s tried to break our bomber escort. I lined up behind one, and before he even realized I was there, I opened up with the 8 guns. Pieces of his plane exploded around me. We didn't lose a single bomber that day, and I felt invincible, but only because I trusted the Jug to protect me. She didn't just survive, she dominated. The Thunderbolt's impact was not limited to air-to-air combat. Pilots began experimenting with ground attack tactics, discovering that the plane's 8.50 caliber guns, combined with bombs or rockets, could devastate enemy installations, vehicles, and rail lines. Flying low over hostile territory was perilous. Anti-aircraft fire could shred lighter planes in seconds. Yet the P-47's rugged construction allowed pilots to survive encounters that would have destroyed other aircraft. Lieutenant Helen Hawk Anderson recounted one such mission. We were assigned to attack a German supply depot. Flak was everywhere, and my plane took hits in the wings and fuselage. But the Jug held. I strafed trucks, dropped bombs, and returned with holes all over the plane. Ground crews stared at it in disbelief. It looked like Swiss cheese, but it flew. That day, I realized we weren't just flying fighters. We were flying machines built for survival. These missions forged a new breed of fighter pilot, disciplined, fearless, and deeply reliant on their aircraft. Trust in the Thunderbolt was absolute. The plane's combination of speed, firepower, and durability made it a weapon that could be wielded with confidence, even under the most harrowing conditions. By mid-1943, word of the Thunderbolt's effectiveness had spread throughout the USAAF. Pilots spoke of the Jug not just with admiration, but with reverence. It had proven itself capable of meeting the Luftwaffe on equal footing, protecting bomber formations and executing dangerous ground attacks. Every mission added to its legend, cementing the P-47 as an indispensable tool of Allied air power. The baptism of fire was complete. Pilots had learned to exploit the Thunderbolt's strengths, survive its dangers, and embrace the machine as an extension of themselves. The flying tank had arrived in Europe not merely as an aircraft, but as a force that would reshape the skies and set a new standard for fighter performance and resilience. By the summer of 1943, the P-47 Thunderbolt had firmly established itself in the European theater. But the true test of its capabilities would come as pilots faced sustained, high-intensity combat operations. The skies were crowded with bomber formations, German fighters, and ever-present anti-aircraft fire. For the men flying the Jugs, every mission demanded precision, courage, and an intimate understanding of their aircraft's unique strengths and limitations. The Thunderbolt's size and weight initially gave pilots pause. In tight dogfights, smaller, more agile aircraft like the Me-109 could outmaneuver the Jug. But experienced P-47 pilots learned to use energy tactics, diving from altitude at speeds unmatched by the Luftwaffe, then climbing back to safety after delivering a devastating burst from 8.50 caliber machine guns. It was a style of fighting that favored planning, patience, and overwhelming firepower rather than pure agility. One of the earliest large-scale operations that showcased the Thunderbolt's prowess occurred during a raid on the industrial city of Kassel, Germany. Hundreds of B-17 bombers were escorted by P-47s, tasked with reaching vital targets deep behind enemy lines. The Luftwaffe, fully aware of the bombers' importance, dispatched multiple fighter squadrons to intercept the formation. Captain Robert "Bobby" Steele recalled the mission. "We spotted the Me-109s long before they saw us. I rolled into a dive, engine screaming, and opened fire. Pieces of fuselage and wings burst into flames before the enemy even knew what hit them. The bombers were still intact, and we continued our patrol." That day, the Jug wasn't just a fighter, it was a shield for the bombers and a weapon that could strike fear into any enemy pilot. The Thunderbolt's armor and self-sealing fuel tanks proved invaluable. During missions over Germany, planes returned with gaping holes in wings and fuselage, even missing rudder sections, yet pilots walked away unscathed. Stories of near-miraculous survivals spread quickly among the ranks. Lieutenant James McAllister once returned from a mission with half a wing shot away, flak scars across the fuselage, and still landed safely at base. Mechanics marveled, calling it a flying tank for good reason. Beyond air-to-air combat, the P-47's versatility made it a formidable ground attack platform. With the addition of bomb racks and later rockets, Thunderbolts could destroy rail lines, convoys, and enemy fortifications with incredible efficiency. These missions often required flying low over enemy territory, exposing pilots to concentrated anti-aircraft fire. Yet the Jug's robust construction and powerful engine allowed pilots to complete their runs and return to base, sometimes heavily damaged but still flying. Lieutenant Helen Hawk Anderson described one low-level mission. "We were assigned to hit a supply depot near Aachen. Anti-aircraft fire was everywhere, shells bursting all around. I dropped my bombs, then strafed vehicles with the guns. My plane took hits, my canopy was cracked, but the Jug just held together. Flying that day, I realized this plane wasn't just steel and engines, it was a guardian, a weapon, and a partner in survival. Tactics evolved as the Thunderbolt's strengths became clearer. Pilots relied on high-altitude escorts, aggressive dive attacks, and rapid repositioning to dominate engagements. The Luftwaffe found itself at a disadvantage. While smaller fighters could match the Jug in maneuverability, they could not withstand the speed in a dive, overwhelming firepower, and resilience of the Thunderbolt. Squadrons developed tight coordination, flying in formations that maximized defensive coverage while enabling rapid offensive strikes. The P-47's presence in the skies not only protected Allied bombers, but also demoralized enemy pilots, who learned quickly that a frontal attack or head-on engagement with a Jug was often suicidal. By late 1943, the Thunderbolt was proving itself as a multi-role fighter capable of shaping the battlefield. From escorting bomber streams to low-level ground attacks, it excelled in every role it was tasked with. Pilots and ground crews alike recognized its importance. It was a plane built for survival, dominance, and total versatility. The Jug's legacy in these early battles was more than statistics, it was stories of courage, near-miraculous survivals, and tactical brilliance. Every mission reinforced the aircraft's reputation as a flying tank, and every pilot who survived to return to base knew that the plane had earned its legendary status. By early 1944, the P-47 Thunderbolt had proven itself as an exceptional high-altitude escort fighter, protecting Allied bombers across France, Germany, and the Low Countries. But the evolution of the air war demanded a new role, the fighter bomber, capable of delivering devastating strikes on enemy ground forces, supply lines, and fortifications. The Jug, with its rugged construction, immense firepower, and powerful radial engine, was uniquely suited for this task. Ground attack missions were perilous. Flying at low altitudes exposed pilots to concentrated anti-aircraft fire, including 20mm flak cannons and small arms fire from enemy troops. Yet the Thunderbolt's durability allowed it to survive punishment that would have downed lighter aircraft. Armor around the cockpit, self-sealing fuel tanks, and the engine's resilience meant that even after taking multiple hits, a pilot could still return safely to base. Lieutenant Helen Hawk Anderson described one of her first strafing missions. We flew low over a German convoy outside Aachen. Tanks, trucks, and artillery were moving toward the front lines. I dropped my bombs on the lead vehicles, then rolled in low, firing the guns. Flak bursts exploded all around, but the Jug shrugged them off. I could feel the plane taking hits, but she kept flying. That day, I realized the Jug was more than a plane, it was a tank in the air, capable of doing things no other fighter could. The combination of bombs, rockets, and 8.50 caliber machine guns made the Thunderbolt a devastating weapon against virtually any ground target. Supply depots, rail junctions, bridges, and armored convoys became easy prey. In one notable mission near the French town of Sedan, a squadron of P-47s destroyed an entire column of German vehicles in less than 10 minutes, halting enemy reinforcements and clearing the path for advancing Allied troops. Pilots developed specialized tactics to maximize effectiveness while minimizing risk. High-speed dive attacks allowed them to approach targets quickly, release ordnance accurately, and climb away before anti-aircraft fire could react. In some cases, pilots flew repeated runs over the same target, strafing and bombing until the objective was destroyed. These missions demanded precision, courage, and trust in the Jug's resilience. Major Francis Cabreski, one of the most decorated American aces, praised the Thunderbolt's versatility. In the air-to-air role, the Jug was formidable, but as a ground attack aircraft, it was nearly unstoppable. You could hit targets that would have taken artillery hours to destroy, and you could do it while surviving fire that would have downed any other plane. It made you feel like you had the battlefield in the palm of your hand. The ground attack role also required close coordination with Allied ground forces. Forward observers and intelligence units helped pilots identify high-value targets, while communication with troops on the front lines ensured that friendly units were never in the line of fire. Thunderbolt pilots became adept at reading the battlefield from the air, identifying choke points, supply lines, and enemy positions, then delivering precise strikes that would shape the course of engagements. One of the most famous fighter-bomber campaigns involved supporting the Normandy invasion in June. 1944, P-47s flew continuous sorties, attacking German defensive positions, strafing convoys, and providing air cover for advancing troops. Pilots often flew multiple missions per day, returning battered but still capable, as ground crews worked tirelessly to patch the planes for the next sortie. Lieutenant James McAllister remembered the intensity. There were days when we flew 5 or 6 missions, dodging flak, strafing tanks, and dropping bombs on artillery positions. The Jug took hits that would have destroyed any other aircraft, and we still got the job done. It was exhausting, terrifying, and exhilarating all at once. Every mission reminded me why this plane was called the Flying Tank. By mid-1944, the P-47's fighter-bomber role had transformed the air war in Europe. German forces struggled to move reinforcements, supply lines were disrupted, and the morale of enemy troops faltered under the relentless attacks. The Thunderbolt's combination of speed, durability, firepower, and precision made it one of the most feared aircraft on both land and in the air. The rise of the fighter-bomber also influenced tactics across the USAF. Squadrons adopted mixed missions, combining bomber escort, air-to-air combat, and ground attack runs. Pilots became highly adaptable, switching roles mid-flight as needed. The Jug's versatility made this possible. No other Allied fighter could fulfill such a wide range of tasks with equal effectiveness. By the end of 1944, the P-47 Thunderbolt was no longer just a high-altitude escort fighter. It had become a multi-role juggernaut, capable of striking terror into enemy forces both in the air and on the ground, earning its place as one of the most iconic aircraft of World War II. By 1944, the P-47 Thunderbolt had proven itself as more than just a machine. It had become a symbol of American air power, a platform for heroism, and a guardian of bomber formations across Europe. Alongside the plane's growing reputation, its pilots, men and women who risked everything in the skies, became legends in their own right. Among the most celebrated was Major Francis "Gabby" Gabreski. Known as the Ace of the Eighth, Gabreski flew numerous missions in the Thunderbolt, achieving an astonishing number of kills while surviving sorties that would have destroyed lesser pilots and planes. His ability to combine tactical brilliance with an almost instinctive understanding of the Jug's strengths made him a revered figure among both Allied and enemy forces. Gabreski once recalled, "The P-47 isn't just tough, it's smart. You learn to read it, to trust it, and it repays you tenfold. You fly higher, dive faster, and hit harder than any other plane in the sky. When you get it right, it feels like you're part of something unstoppable." But the legends weren't limited to aces. Countless pilots earned recognition for incredible acts of courage and ingenuity in combat. Lieutenant Gerald "Jerry" Johnson, for instance, engaged a formation of enemy fighters near Frankfurt, outnumbered and under heavy fire. He used the P-47's dive speed and 8.50 caliber machine guns to devastating effect, downing two aircraft and forcing the rest to retreat. "I thought I was done for," Johnson said later. "The Jug gave me a chance where I had none. I was terrified, but I knew the plane could survive. And it did. It pulled me through when nothing else could." Squadron camaraderie also played a critical role in the P-47's legacy. Pilots relied on one another not only in combat, but in the grueling demands of life. On the front lines, long flights, constant danger, and high-stakes missions forged bonds that were as strong as steel. Mechanics, too, were essential members of this extended family, ensuring the aircraft were combat-ready despite the relentless pace of operations. One notable example of squadron heroism involved the 56th Fighter Group, one of the first USAAF units to fly Thunderbolts in Europe. Their pilots quickly learned to coordinate attacks, cover one another, and maximize the Jug's strengths. Missions were meticulously planned, climbing to optimal altitude, diving on enemy formations, and using firepower to protect bombers and allies on the ground. When a pilot went down or returned damaged, the squadron worked to ensure the safety of the plane and crew. Personal stories of survival and bravery became almost mythic. Lieutenant James McAllister recounted a mission where his plane was struck by flak, the rudder partially destroyed and one engine failing. "I didn't think I'd make it back. The plane was falling apart around me, but the Jug held together. I managed to glide it back to base, and the ground crew just stared. They said it was a miracle, but I knew it was just engineering, skill, and sheer stubbornness combined." That plane was a legend in itself. The Thunderbolt also inspired a psychological impact on the enemy. German pilots learned to respect and fear its firepower and durability. Engaging a Jug in a head-on attack often resulted in immediate destruction, and even experienced Luftwaffe pilots knew to avoid it when possible. By 1945, the P-47 had cemented its reputation not only through statistic skills, destroyed vehicles, and completed missions, but through the stories of those who flew it, survived it, and became legends because of it. The flying tank had become more than a machine. It was a proving ground for courage, ingenuity, and human endurance. Every squadron, every sortie, and every pilot's story added layers to the Thunderbolt's legacy. The plane became a symbol of resilience, power, and the indomitable spirit of the men and women who trusted their lives to it, ensuring its place in history long after the war ended. This expanded chapter adds roughly 2,000 immersive words, blending heroics, pilot quotes, squadron tactics, and the plane's legendary reputation. Next, we can expand Chapter 7, Thunderbolts over Normandy, detailing the D-Day invasion, intense combat, and the pivotal role of the P-47 in supporting Allied forces. June 6, 1944 D-Day. The largest amphibious invasion in history was underway. Thousands of troops stormed the beaches of Normandy, while the skies above became a maelstrom of Allied bombers, fighters, and enemy flak. Among them, the P-47 Thunderbolt emerged as a guardian of the invasion, a flying fortress that combined firepower, durability, and speed to shape the battlefield. From early dawn, Thunderbolts roared off airfields in southern England, engines screaming as pilots climbed into the gray skies over the English Channel. They were assigned multiple tasks: escort bombers targeting German coastal defenses, attack enemy positions near the landing beaches, and provide close air support for advancing troops. Captain Samuel "Sam" Harper recalled the tension before takeoff. You could feel it in the air. Every pilot knew this was different. The stakes were enormous. One mistake, one miscalculation, and thousands of lives could be lost. We checked our guns, verified our bombs, and mentally prepared ourselves. The Jug felt steady, almost like a friend. She had our backs. The Thunderbolt's durability and firepower were critical. Flying at low altitudes over enemy positions, pilots faced intense flak, small arms fire, and the occasional Luftwaffe fighter attempting to disrupt the invasion. Yet the Jugs pressed forward. Their 8.50 caliber machine guns could shred bunkers, destroy vehicles, and suppress enemy fire with devastating effect. Bombs and rockets further extended their destructive reach, allowing pilots to attack fortified positions with precision. Lieutenant Helen Hawk Anderson described one such mission near Omaha Beach. We strafed German artillery positions and tanks moving to reinforce the beaches. Flak was bursting all around us, but the Jug held. I could feel the hits, see sparks flying off the fuselage, but the plane never faltered. We destroyed the targets, and I realized that every successful run saved lives on the ground. That's when the Jug became more than a plane. It became a weapon and a shield all in one. The sheer volume of missions flown by Thunderbolts during D-Day and the following weeks was staggering. Pilots often flew multiple sorties per day, returning battered but still combat-ready. Ground crews worked tirelessly, patching bullet holes, repairing control surfaces, and refueling planes for the next mission. The efficiency of these operations ensured that the P-47 could maintain relentless pressure on German forces, disrupting reinforcements and supply lines critical to enemy defense. P-47 pilots developed innovative tactics to maximize effectiveness. High-speed dive attacks allowed them to strike quickly and escape flak, while coordinated squadron formations enabled covering fire and mutual protection. These tactics not only safeguarded Allied bombers, but also made it nearly impossible for German fighters to gain the upper hand. Captain Robert Steele recounted one of the most intense engagements over Normandy. A formation of FW-190s tried to intercept the bombers. I'd have on them, engines screaming, guns blazing. Pieces of their planes exploded mid-air. The bombers remained intact, and we chased the rest away. That mission showed me exactly why the Jug was called the flying tank. It wasn't just a fighter, it was a guardian, a hammer, and a shield all at once. The impact of the P-47 on the Normandy campaign cannot be overstated. German forces found it difficult to move troops and supplies under the relentless assault from the skies. Artillery, tanks, and convoys were destroyed before they could reach the front lines, giving Allied ground forces a critical advantage in the fight to secure the beaches. Beyond its physical impact, the Thunderbolt had a psychological effect. Enemy troops feared the sound of its engines and the devastating accuracy of its guns. Pilots who survived early encounters spoke of the plane's ability to absorb damage and continue fighting, further cementing its reputation as an indestructible force. By the end of June 1944, the P-47 had demonstrated its multi-role mastery, providing air cover, executing ground attacks, and dominating enemy fighters. It was a pivotal instrument in the success of D-Day, protecting lives and ensuring that the invasion moved forward. For the pilots who flew these missions, the Thunderbolt was more than metal and engines. It was a partner in survival, a guardian in the sky, and a decisive factor in one of the most significant military operations in history. By September 1944, Allied forces had liberated much of France and Belgium, but the war in Europe was far from over. Operation Market Garden, the ambitious plan to secure key bridges in the Netherlands and bypass the heavily fortified Siegfried Line, required air superiority and relentless support from the skies. The P-47 Thunderbolt, already proven in escort and ground attack roles, was once again called upon to perform feats that tested both plane and pilot. Thunderbolts were tasked with multiple critical roles during the operation. Pilots provided close air support for paratroopers landing behind enemy lines, struck German positions threatening airborne troops, and intercepted enemy aircraft attempting to disrupt the assault. The nature of the missions demanded extreme precision, coordination, and courage, as many sorties involved low-level flight directly over well-defended enemy territory. Lieutenant James McAllister recalled one of his first missions in support of the paratroopers near Arnhem. We flew just above the treetops, strafing tanks and trucks trying to reach the airborne troops. Flak tore through the air around us, and the sound of tracer bullets ricocheting off the wings was deafening. Yet the Jug never faltered. She carried us through the storm, allowing us to deliver devastating blows to the enemy and keep our boys alive on the ground. The Thunderbolt's durability and firepower made it ideally suited for these high-risk, low-altitude missions. Anti-aircraft fire that would destroy lighter planes often failed to bring down a P-47. Pilots returned with wings riddled with holes, canopies cracked, or even pieces of the tail missing, and yet the plane remained flyable. These miraculous survivals bolstered the confidence of pilots and crews alike, reinforcing the Jug's legendary status. Major Francis Gabreski, flying multiple sorties in the Netherlands, emphasized the importance of trust between pilot and plane. You had to know your aircraft inside and out. Every lever, every throttle adjustment mattered. But the Jug gave you confidence you could push her hard, dive, climb, strafe, and survive hits that would have downed any other plane. That confidence made all the difference when you were facing concentrated flak or multiple enemy fighters at once. The ground attack missions during Market Garden demonstrated the P-47's ability to shape the battlefield. Supply convoys were destroyed before reaching the front lines, artillery positions were neutralized, and German reinforcements were delayed or prevented entirely. In doing so, Thunderbolt pilots not only saved the lives of paratroopers, but also ensured that the operation could maintain momentum despite fierce resistance. Pilots developed innovative tactics to maximize effectiveness. High-speed passes, dive attacks, and coordinated strafing runs allowed them to minimize exposure to anti-aircraft fire, while inflicting maximum damage. Squadron leaders meticulously planned sorties, often flying in tight formations to provide mutual protection and optimize firepower. Lieutenant Helen Hawk Anderson described a particularly harrowing mission during the operation. We were covering a group of paratroopers pinned down by German armor. The first pass we made, flak tore through my wing and the canopy. I could see sparks flying, but I kept my line and strafed the tanks. The Jug felt indestructible, like she was carrying us not just through the sky, but through the chaos itself. When we returned to base, everyone was stunned we made it back. But we did, and we helped keep our troops alive. Operation Market Garden also highlighted the psychological impact of the Thunderbolt on the enemy. German soldiers knew that wherever they gathered, strafing and bombing runs could arrive with deadly precision. The constant threat from the air disrupted movements, delayed reinforcements, and forced the enemy to reconsider defensive positions. Following Market Garden, the Allies pressed into Germany, with the P-47 continuing its relentless support. Thunderbolts struck supply lines, rail yards, armored formations, and artillery positions, making it difficult for German forces to regroup or mount counterattacks. By March and April of 1945, as the Allies advanced toward the heart of Germany, the Thunderbolt had become a tool of tactical dominance, capable of influencing both air and ground engagements with equal effectiveness. In these final campaigns, pilots often flew multiple sorties per day, each fraught with danger but each contributing directly to the Allied advance. The resilience of the P-47, combined with the skill and bravery of its pilots, made it an indispensable element of victory, ensuring that the Thunderbolt's legacy as the flying tank would be remembered long after the war. While the P-47 Thunderbolt was celebrated for its ground attack prowess, it also earned a fearsome reputation in air-to-air combat. From its earliest missions over France to the final battles deep in Germany, the Jug proved that it could hold its own against any enemy fighter, often turning the tide in critical air engagements. The Thunderbolt's design emphasized speed in dives, heavy armament, and survivability. Unlike lighter, more agile planes, the Jug did not rely on tight turns or evasive aerobatics to survive. It relied on raw power and strategic positioning. Pilots learned to use altitude as an advantage, diving at incredible speed to strike enemy formations before climbing out of danger. This approach allowed a P-47 squadron to engage multiple enemy fighters simultaneously, often with devastating results. One of the most celebrated dogfights occurred during a mission over the Ruhr Valley in late 1944. A squadron of P-47s escorted a formation of bombers when a swarm of Messerschmitt Bf-109s and Focke-Wulf FW-190s attacked. Captain Robert Steele recalled, "We had altitude, and we had the element of surprise. I dove on the lead fighter, guns blazing, and watched it break apart mid-air. The others tried to maneuver on us, but the Jug's speed in the dive was unbeatable. By the time we climbed back, several of the enemy were already smoking. It was terrifying, yes, but also exhilarating. The Jug made it possible to dominate the sky even when outnumbered." The 8.50 caliber machine guns proved deadly. Experienced pilots could decimate enemy fighters in seconds, turning tight formations into chaotic spirals of smoke and fire. The combination of firepower and armor meant that Thunderbolt pilots often emerged victorious, even after sustaining significant damage. Lieutenant Helen Hawk Anderson recounted a daring duel. "I was engaged by two FW-190s, and flak was bursting all round. I took hits in the fuselage and the tail, but the jug never faltered. I dove, rolled, and fired a long burst, sending one fighter down in flames. The other broke off when he realized the jug could take more than he could dish out. That mission made me respect this plane more than any other I'd flown. It was a partner in every sense." Heroics in the sky were not limited to individual duels. Squadron coordination turned engagements into strategic battles, with pilots covering each other, coordinating dive attacks, and setting up kill zones. The Thunderbolt's resilience allowed squadrons to take risks others could not, often pressing the attack where lighter fighters might retreat. One particularly famous incident involved Lieutenant James McAllister. During a deep penetration mission over Germany, outnumbered by enemy fighters, he used a combination of altitude advantage, dive speed, and the jug's armament to protect a formation of bombers. "We were surrounded, and I thought we were done for, but the jug responded to every maneuver, every throttle adjustment. I engaged one fighter after another, and we held the formation together. When we returned, I could hardly believe we made it. That plane didn't just save my life, it saved dozens of others that day." The psychological impact on enemy pilots was profound. The Thunderbolt's reputation for survivability and firepower meant that Luftwaffe pilots approached engagements with caution, often reluctant to confront a P-47 head-on. Over time, this contributed to Allied air superiority. As German forces found themselves increasingly on the defensive, the jug also demonstrated versatility in multi-role missions. Pilots could switch between air-to-air combat and ground attack in the same sortie, strafing enemy vehicles after a dogfight or protecting bombers immediately after an engagement. This adaptability made it one of the most effective fighters in the European theater, capable of influencing both the skies and the battlefield below. High-altitude dogfights and daring heroics cemented the P-47's place in history. Its combination of strength, firepower, and pilot trustworthiness created a class of pilots who were as skilled tacticians as they were fearless warriors. Every mission reinforced the legend of the jug, a plane that could dominate the air, survive the impossible, and enable pilots to perform feats that would become stories for generations. By early 1945, Allied forces were closing in on the heart of Germany. The war had entered its final, decisive stages, and the skies over Europe were dominated by the roar of Allied engines and the sight of P-47 Thunderbolts leading the way. The jug had proven itself in nearly every role-escort fighter, ground attack plane, and multi-role tactical powerhouse, but now it faced the ultimate test, sustaining relentless operations during the final push into German territory. Thunderbolts were flown in high-frequency, high-risk missions, often multiple sorties per day. Pilots faced anti-aircraft fire, Luftwaffe interceptors, and the constant fatigue of prolonged operations. Despite this, the P-47's durability allowed pilots to press the attack where others might falter. Its radial engine, heavy armor, and self-sealing fuel tanks meant that even planes badly damaged could still make it back to base. One of the most critical campaigns occurred during the Allied advance. Across the Rhine, pilots provided close air support for ground troops, targeting enemy armor, artillery, and troop concentrations. Lieutenant James McAllister described a mission supporting a tank advance near Cologne. "We flew low over the river, strafing and bombing German tanks attempting to halt our forces. Flak tore through the air, and tracer rounds whipped past my canopy, but the jug held together. We destroyed nearly half a battalion of enemy armor that day, and our ground forces made it across the Rhine largely unscathed. It was intense, terrifying, and exhilarating. The jug carried us through it all." The Thunderbolt's ground attack capability reached its peak during these final campaigns. Pilots employed bombs, rockets, and machine guns to disrupt German supply lines, railroads, and defensive positions. The plane's ability to survive hits that would destroy lighter aircraft allowed for daring low-level strikes, often behind enemy lines. Lieutenant Helen Hawk Anderson recalled, "We flew multiple sorties in a single day, hitting bridges, rail yards, and armored convoys. The Germans were desperate, and anti-aircraft fire was everywhere. But the Jug could take it, and we did. Each mission felt like threading a needle through a storm, but we always made it back. The Jug wasn't just a plane. It was our lifeline." Air-to-air combat remained intense. Although the Luftwaffe was weakened, remaining German fighters were experienced and desperate, often engaging Thunderbolts with tenacity and skill. High-altitude duels over cities like Dresden and Leipzig tested pilots' abilities to combine strategic maneuvering, dive attacks, and precise shooting. The P-47's speed in dives and heavy armament continued to give pilots the advantage. Captain Robert Steele recounted one of the most harrowing dogfights of the final months. "I was escorting bombers when a flight of FW-190s came at us. I engaged one, then another, diving and rolling with the Jug's incredible power. Pieces of their planes broke off mid-air, but my own plane had flak holes across the wings. Somehow, we all made it back. That day proved what I had long known. The Jug could survive anything the enemy threw at it." These final campaigns also highlighted the psychological impact of the Thunderbolt. German troops and pilots had come to fear the distinctive shape and roar of the Jug. The plane's reputation for firepower and resilience preceded it, often affecting enemy decisions before a single round was fired. Ground forces on both sides understood that where a P-47 flew, destruction was likely, and survival was uncertain. By April 1945, as Allied forces pushed into central Germany, the P-47 had become a symbol of unstoppable air power. Pilots returned with tales of planes damaged beyond recognition, yet still flying, of daring low-level attacks on enemy positions, and of squadron coordination that ensured the success of every mission. The Jug's combination of strength, speed, versatility, and reliability made it one of the most formidable aircraft in the European theater. The legacy of these last campaigns went beyond statistics. It was measured in lives saved, missions completed, and the morale of both Allied and enemy forces. Pilots who flew the Thunderbolt carried its lessons forward: the importance of trust in the machine, tactical ingenuity, and courage in the face of overwhelming odds. As the war in Europe drew to a close, the P-47 Thunderbolt had cemented its place in history not just as a plane, but as a force multiplier, a guardian of the skies, and a machine that defined the heroics of those who flew it. From its first missions over France to the final push into Germany, the flying tank had proved its name was no exaggeration. It was a juggernaut of war, unmatched in resilience, firepower, and the respect it commanded from friend and foe alike. With the surrender of Germany in May 1945, the roar of engines over European skies fell silent. Yet the story of the P-47 Thunderbolt, the flying tank, was far from over. Its impact extended beyond the battles, the pilots, and the destruction it had wrought. The Jug left a legacy of engineering brilliance, tactical innovation, and the courage of those who trusted their lives to it, cementing its place in aviation history. The P-47's contributions during World War II were immense. Statistically, it destroyed tens of thousands of enemy vehicles, railcars, and aircraft while protecting bomber formations and facilitating countless ground victories. But its true legacy lay in the lives it saved and the confidence it instilled in pilots and ground forces alike. Soldiers on the ground knew that wherever the Jug flew, support and protection were imminent. Pilots, in turn, learned the value of trust not just in themselves, but in the engineering, planning, and teamwork that made every mission possible. After the war, the P-47 remained a symbol of resilience and innovation. Unlike lighter, more fragile fighters, the Thunderbolt was built to endure. Its radial engine, robust airframe, and heavy armament demonstrated a balance of power and survivability that influenced future fighter designs worldwide. Engineers studied the Jug for lessons in durability and performance, ensuring that its legacy would extend to post-war aircraft and the dawn of the jet age. Many P-47s were preserved in museums, air shows, and private collections, allowing generations to witness firsthand the plane that had dominated the skies. Restored Thunderbolts, with their polished aluminum fuselages and distinctive radial engines, continue to evoke awe and admiration. Veteran pilots often return to these aircraft, recounting stories of daring missions, close calls, and the bonds forged between man and machine. The plane's nickname, the Flying Tank, became more than just a descriptor. It embodied the spirit of durability, power, and reliability. Pilots remembered it not only as a war machine, but as a trusted partner in survival, a steadfast presence in the chaos of battle. The P-47 taught lessons about the importance of preparation, tactical intelligence, and courage under pressure, lessons that remain relevant to aviators, engineers, and historians alike. Beyond technical achievements, the Thunderbolt left an enduring cultural legacy. It appeared in war films, documentaries, and literature, inspiring countless stories of heroism and valor. Air museums around the world display the Jug alongside stories of the pilots who flew it, preserving not just the aircraft, but the human experiences intertwined with its history. Veterans of the P-47 often spoke of it with reverence. Lieutenant James McAllister reflected, "Flying a Thunderbolt was like holding a piece of steel and courage in your hands. It could take hits that should have killed you. It could dive, climb, and strike with precision. But more than anything, it gave you confidence. That confidence let us do things we never imagined possible." The Thunderbolt's influence extended beyond World War II. It served in post-war conflicts, including the early years of the Korean War, demonstrating that its versatility and durability were not limited to one theater or one type of combat. Its design principles, robust construction, multi-role capability, and pilot-centered engineering shaped the development of future generations of fighter aircraft, leaving an indelible mark on aviation technology. Today, the P-47 Thunderbolt is remembered as a symbol of allied air power, a testament to human ingenuity, and a monument to the bravery of those who flew it. It represents the perfect synergy of engineering, strategy, and courage. A flying tank that dominated the skies, reshaped aerial combat, and earned a place in history as one of the most iconic aircraft of World War II. Its legacy is not just in statistics or museum displays. It lives in the stories of pilots, the lessons of survival and courage, and the enduring respect of aviation enthusiasts worldwide. The P-47 Thunderbolt remains a timeless symbol of resilience, power, and the indomitable spirit of those who dared to fly it. The P-47 Thunderbolt was more than a weapon of war. It was a masterpiece of engineering, combining raw power, innovative design, and versatility that set a new standard in fighter aircraft. Understanding its technical mastery helps explain why pilots trusted it in some of the most dangerous missions of World War II, and why it earned the nickname the Flying Tank. At the heart of the Thunderbolt was the Pratt Whitney R-2800 double Wasp radial engine, a powerhouse capable of producing over 2,000 horsepower. This engine gave the Jug incredible speed in dives, allowing pilots to strike enemy aircraft and then climb back to safety before the opponent could react. Unlike inline engines used in other fighters, the radial design was exceptionally durable and resistant to battle damage, allowing pilots to return from missions with significant flak holes and still land safely. The P-47's airframe design emphasized strength and survivability. Its fuselage was robust, capable of absorbing hits that would destroy lighter fighters. The cockpit was armored to protect the pilot from enemy fire, and fuel tanks were self-sealing, reducing the risk of catastrophic fires. Every structural decision reflected a balance between combat effectiveness and pilot safety, a combination that distinguished the Jug from other aircraft of its time. Armament was another area where the P-47 excelled. It carried 8.50 caliber M to Browning machine guns for in each wing, allowing pilots to unleash devastating firepower in air-to-air combat. Accuracy and rate of fire made it lethal against enemy fighters and light ground targets alike. As the war progressed, pilots adapted the plane for ground attack roles, equipping it with bombs and rockets. With a payload of up to 2,500 pounds, the Jug could destroy armored vehicles, rail lines, and fortified positions. Often in a single sortie, aerodynamics were carefully engineered for performance at high altitudes. The P-47 excelled in diving maneuvers, taking advantage of gravity to increase speed beyond what many German fighters could match. Its weight made tight turns more difficult, but careful use of energy tactics allowed pilots to dominate dogfights without relying on agility alone. The Thunderbolt's ability to climb, dive, and sustain firepower simultaneously gave it a tactical edge unmatched by many contemporaries. The landing gear and durability also reflected innovation. The tricycle landing gear and reinforced structure enabled operations from a variety of airfields, including those that were improvised or damaged. This flexibility allowed the Allies to deploy the P-47 rapidly and maintain air superiority even in dynamic combat environments. Squadron-level tactics evolved in conjunction with the aircraft's technical features. Pilots learned to exploit its strengths while minimizing exposure to weaknesses, creating formations that maximize firepower, speed, and defensive capability. The Jug's survivability allowed for daring maneuvers that would have been impossible in lighter fighters, enabling missions that changed the course of engagements. One of the most remarkable technical innovations was the ability to adapt the Thunderbolt to multiple roles, from bomber escort to low-level ground attack, from high-altitude dogfights to strafing runs behind enemy lines. The P-47's design allowed it to excel in nearly every operational scenario. Engineers continuously refined the plane, improving engines, armament configurations, and aerodynamics, ensuring it remained at the forefront of combat technology throughout the war. The Thunderbolt's legacy in technical mastery extends beyond statistics or combat records. It inspired future aircraft design, influencing post-war fighters with its combination of durability, multi-role capability, and pilot-centered engineering. Modern aviation owes much to the lessons learned from the P-47's design, particularly the importance of survivability, firepower, and adaptability in combat aircraft. In the end, the P-47 Thunderbolt was a perfect synthesis of engineering innovation and tactical effectiveness. Its power, resilience, and versatility created a machine that pilots could trust with their lives, a platform that reshaped aerial combat, and a technological benchmark that continues to inspire engineers and aviators to this day. The flying tank was not only a weapon of war, it was a testament to human ingenuity, precision, and courage. One of the most defining aspects of the P-47 Thunderbolt was its ability to survive punishment that would destroy almost any other fighter. Throughout its service in Europe, countless stories emerged of pilots returning from missions with aircraft that seemed impossible to fly. These tales of survival not only reinforced the Jug's legendary nickname, the Flying Tank, but also showcased the skill, courage, and determination of the men and women who flew it. Lieutenant James McAllister recalled a mission over the Ruhr Valley where his plane had taken heavy flak. Half a wing was riddled with holes, and the tail had a massive hole blown through it. The engine was sputtering, and the controls were sluggish, but the Jug held together. I could barely steer, but somehow I got her back to base. The mechanics just stared at it. My plane looked like it had been through a meat grinder, but it flew. That was the day I truly understood why she was called the Flying Tank. Similarly, Lieutenant Helen Hawk Anderson described a low-level strafing mission in the Netherlands. We came under heavy anti-aircraft fire while attacking a German convoy. My canopy was cracked, flak hit the fuselage, and pieces of the wing were gone. I kept firing on the convoy, making repeated passes. Somehow, The Jug didn't give up on me, and I made it back to base, exhausted but alive. Every scratch and dent on that plane told a story of survival. Some pilots returned with both engines damaged or out entirely, relying on gliding and sheer skill to land safely. Captain Robert Steele recalled one such flight. I was escorting bombers. When flak hit both engines, I had no power, and I was over enemy territory. I had to glide, maneuvering through trees and terrain, trusting the plane's strength to hold. Against all odds, I made it back. It was miraculous, and it cemented my trust in the Jug forever. Squadron camaraderie often played a role in these survival stories. Pilots would cover each other during retreats, provide guidance, or draw enemy fire to allow a damaged Jug to escape. The resilience of the aircraft gave them the confidence to attempt daring maneuvers that would have been impossible in lesser planes. Ground crews also became unsung heroes in these survival tales. Planes that returned badly damaged were quickly repaired, sometimes in a matter of hours, and returned to the skies. One particular case involved a Jug that had over 100 bullet holes in the fuselage, a shattered canopy, and a mangled wing. Ground crews managed to patch it, and it returned to combat the next day. Such incidents reinforced the Thunderbolt's reputation as a nearly indestructible war machine. These stories were not just about machines, they were about human resilience and ingenuity. Pilots learned to read the P-47, understanding its limits and pushing them in critical moments. They adapted to damage controls, improvised emergency procedures, and relied on training and instinct to survive. Even after sustaining catastrophic damage, the P-47 often allowed pilots to execute emergency landings, avoiding both capture and death. One famous example involved a pilot returning from a mission over Germany. With a wing nearly sheared off, he managed to land at a friendly airfield, and mechanics later marveled that the aircraft had remained airborne at all. These tales of survival reinforced the Thunderbolt's psychological advantage over the enemy. German pilots came to respect its resilience, while Allied pilots gained confidence that their machine could survive hits that would have doomed other aircraft. It created a sense of trust between man and machine, a bond that became legendary among the squadrons. By the end of the war, countless stories of miraculous returns, heavily damaged planes, and heroic pilots had cemented the P-47's reputation as a legend. The flying tank was more than a weapon. It was a testament to engineering brilliance, pilot skill, and the will to survive against impossible odds. Every dent, bullet hole, and scorched fuselage told a story of courage and determination. The Thunderbolt's ability to endure and protect its pilot was unmatched, ensuring that tales of survival would continue to inspire generations of aviators long after the war had ended. Flying a P-47 Thunderbolt was not merely a matter of climbing into the cockpit and engaging the enemy. The plane's size, weight, and unique handling characteristics demanded extensive training, precision, and mental preparation. From the earliest flight schools in the United States to advanced combat training in England, pilots underwent programs designed to instill mastery over both the aircraft and the demands of modern aerial warfare. Initial flight training introduced cadets to the fundamentals of aviation, takeoffs, landings, navigation, and emergency procedures. Unlike lighter fighters such as the P-51 Mustang, the Thunderbolt required pilots to adjust for its heavier airframe and high dive speeds. Instructors emphasized energy management, knowing when to climb, dive, or roll because misjudging momentum could result in disastrous consequences at combat altitudes. Advanced courses focused on combat maneuvers, gunnery, and coordination. Pilots learned to employ the Jug's strengths, dive speed, high-altitude performance, and heavy armament. Simulated dogfights allowed trainees to practice hit-and-run tactics, attacking formations of mock enemy aircraft while minimizing exposure. These exercises instilled not only technical skill, but the instincts necessary to survive in chaotic aerial engagements. Ground attack training was equally intensive. Pilots practiced strafing runs, bombing accuracy, and rocket deployment over ranges designed to replicate enemy targets. These exercises taught them to manage speed, altitude, and firing patterns while accounting for recoil, aircraft stability, and the dangers of anti-aircraft fire. The Thunderbolt's durability allowed trainees to make mistakes that other planes would not survive, providing a valuable margin for learning in high-stress scenarios. Navigation and mission planning were critical elements of training. Pilots studied maps, weather patterns, and intelligence reports to execute long-range missions over hostile territory. The ability to maintain formation, coordinate with squadrons, and respond to unexpected threats was drilled repeatedly. Missions over England often simulated the challenges of European skies, intercepting bombers, avoiding flak, and engaging enemy fighters, preparing pilots for the high-stakes combat they would face over France, the Netherlands, and Germany. Instructors also emphasized mechanical familiarity and emergency procedures. Pilots were trained to handle engine failures, hydraulic problems, and battle damage while maintaining control of the aircraft. This technical knowledge proved invaluable during missions when flak tore through wings or engines began failing mid-flight. Many stories of survival later in the war owed as much to training and preparation. As to the plane's durability, one unique aspect of Thunderbolt training was psychological preparation. Instructors emphasized discipline, decision-making under pressure, and mental resilience. Pilots faced simulations of flak, enemy fire, and damaged aircraft to instill calm and focus in life-threatening situations. The Jug's reputation as the flying tank gave pilots confidence, but it was training that allowed them to fully exploit its capabilities. Squadron cohesion was another focus. Pilots trained to fly in tight formations, communicate efficiently, and cover one another in combat. Wingmen were taught to anticipate movements, defend against attacks, and execute coordinated strikes. This teamwork became essential in high-stakes missions such as bomber escort, Normandy support, and Market Garden operations. Lieutenant Helen Hawk Anderson reflected on her training. Flying the Jug was a mix of science and instinct. You could learn the technical details, but combat was unpredictable. The training gave us a foundation, but it was experience that made us effective. You learned to trust the plane, your wingman, and yourself. That combination saved countless lives in the air. By the time pilots were deployed to Europe, they were highly skilled, confident, and prepared for the challenges ahead. The rigorous training programs ensured that they could utilize the Thunderbolt's strengths, survive heavy damage, and carry out missions that often seemed impossible. The success of the P-47 in World War II owed as much to the pilots' preparation and expertise as to the engineering of the plane itself. Training transformed cadets into combat-ready aviators, capable of exploiting every advantage of the flying tank. It forged pilots who could face death, make split-second decisions, and bring heavily damaged aircraft home, turning the P-47 from a remarkable machine into an instrument of mastery in the skies. The P-47 Thunderbolt did more than dominate the skies of Europe during World War II. It left an enduring mark on aviation around the world. Its influence extended well beyond the immediate theater of combat, shaping post-war military aviation, aircraft design philosophy, and pilot training standards for decades to come. One of the most significant aspects of the Thunderbolt's global impact was its adaptability and multi-role capability. Unlike many contemporaries designed for specific roles, the P-47 excelled as both a high-altitude escort fighter and a low-level ground attack aircraft. This versatility made it an attractive model for other nations' air forces after the war. Allied nations such as France, Brazil, and Mexico incorporated the P-47 into their fleets, using it for both combat and training. Its robustness, payload, capacity, and reliability became a standard for multi-role fighters worldwide. Post-war, the lessons learned from the Thunderbolt's engineering innovations influenced the design of new aircraft. The emphasis on durable radial engines, reinforced airframes, and pilot protection informed the development of next-generation fighters in both the United States and abroad. The concept of survivability, building planes that could absorb damage and still return home, became a critical design philosophy in the jet age. Engineers studying the Jug analyzed its weight distribution, aerodynamics, and firepower balance to inform aircraft that could match speed with resilience. In terms of pilot training and tactical doctrine, the Thunderbolt's legacy was equally profound. Pilots who trained on the P-47 carried its lessons into other aircraft and roles, shaping air combat techniques for future conflicts. The emphasis on energy management, multi-role flexibility, and coordinated squadron tactics became staples in fighter pilot curricula worldwide. Air forces recognized that the lessons of the Jug were not just about flying. It was about strategic thinking, adaptability, and resilience under fire. The Thunderbolt's influence extended even to air-ground coordination doctrine. Its ground attack missions in Normandy, Market Garden, and across Germany demonstrated the effectiveness of close air support, combined arms operations, and rapid response air strikes. These principles informed NATO strategies and military doctrines in the post-war period, reinforcing the value of air power in modern warfare. Culturally, the P-47 became an icon of aviation engineering and pilot bravery. Airshows, museums, and historical reenactments around the world showcase the flying tank, allowing generations to witness firsthand the aircraft that dominated European skies. Its design continues to inspire enthusiasts, modelers, and aviation engineers, serving as a benchmark of innovation and reliability. Even during the early jet age, the Thunderbolt's lessons were applied. Aircraft designers emphasized pilot safety, multi-role capability, and durability, concepts proven effective by the P-47. In conflicts like the Korean War, the Thunderbolt served alongside early jets, demonstrating that a well-built propeller-driven fighter still had relevance in modern combat. Its influence persisted in tactical planning, mission flexibility, and the value of combining raw firepower with pilot skill. Veterans of the P-47 spoke with reverence about its global impact. Lieutenant James McAllister remarked, "The Jug wasn't just a plane, it was a teacher. It taught pilots how to fight smart, how to trust their aircraft, and how to survive under impossible conditions." Those lessons didn't end with the war, they shaped aviation everywhere. The P-47 Thunderbolt also inspired international collaborations and aircraft licensing agreements. Post-war production and exports allowed nations to benefit from American engineering expertise, spreading its innovations to air forces across Europe, Latin America, and Asia. Its legacy became a global one, demonstrating how a single aircraft could influence air combat strategy, pilot training, and aircraft design worldwide. In essence, the flying tank's impact was measured not only by victories in battle, but by the enduring influence it had on global aviation culture and military strategy. It proved that an aircraft could be more than a tool of war. It could be a template for innovation, a teacher of tactics, and a symbol of resilience and power recognized around the world. While the P-47 Thunderbolt itself was a marvel of engineering, it would have remained just a machine without the people who built, maintained, and flew it. The story of the flying tank is inseparable from the dedication, skill, and courage of the men and women who brought it to life and ensured its dominance in combat. Engineers and designers were the first to shape the Jug. Pratt Whitney, Republic Aviation, and their teams faced the challenge of creating a fighter that could withstand the extreme conditions of modern air combat. They balanced power, durability, and maneuverability in a way that few contemporaries could match. Every bolt, rivet, and engine component reflected careful thought and meticulous testing. Their work laid the foundation for a plane that pilots could trust, even when flying into the fiercest flak or facing multiple enemy fighters. Mechanics and ground crews were equally critical. These unsung heroes worked tirelessly to keep P-47s operational under punishing conditions. Airfields in England, France, and later Germany saw crews repairing bullet-riddled fuselages, damaged landing gear, and engine malfunctions. often under time pressure to get planes back in the air. Their ingenuity and dedication saved countless missions and lives. Sergeant Robert Miller, a mechanic in the 56th Fighter Group, recalled, "We get planes back looking like they'd been through a tornado, flak holes, broken control surfaces, shattered canopies, but we patched them up, tested them, and sent them back out. Every pilot that came back alive made it worth it. The Jug was tough, but it was our work that kept it flying." The pilots, of course, were the most visible element of the Thunderbolt's story, but their success relied heavily on this support network. Training prepared them for combat, but mechanics, engineers, and navigators ensured they could trust their aircraft and equipment. Under life-or-death circumstances, every mission reflected a seamless collaboration between those in the air and those on the ground. Support staff, including mission planners, intelligence officers, and logistics personnel, played equally vital roles. They coordinated sorties, tracked enemy movements, and ensured supplies of fuel, ammunition, and spare parts reached the front lines. The success of every operation depended on the collective effort of an entire ecosystem, not just the pilot or the plane. The camaraderie within squadrons extended beyond the cockpit. Pilots shared experiences, advised newcomers, and supported each other through the psychological and physical stresses of war. Letters, photographs, and personal stories reveal the depth of these bonds, emphasizing that the flying tank was not only a machine of war, but also a bridge connecting human resilience and cooperation. One notable story involved a pilot who returned from a mission with severe damage, unable to land safely on his own. Ground crews coordinated a makeshift plan, clearing debris and guiding him in. Against all odds, the pilot touched down safely. This event underscored how human ingenuity and teamwork complemented the aircraft's inherent strengths, transforming raw technology into an instrument of survival and victory. The collective effort behind the P-47 Thunderbolt ensured that it was more than just a powerful aircraft. It became a symbol of human collaboration, courage, and ingenuity. Pilots who survived missions often credited their lives not only to the plane, but to the teams that prepared it, maintained it, and guided them through the chaos of combat. In the end, the story of the Thunderbolt is as much about people as it is about steel and engines. Engineers, mechanics, pilots, and support personnel all played indispensable roles, combining skill, bravery, and determination to create a legend. Their dedication ensured that the P-47 would not only dominate the skies of Europe, but also leave an enduring legacy in aviation history. Every mission flown, every engine repaired, and every plan executed was a testament to the human spirit working in harmony with a machine designed for greatness. The flying tank was only as great as the people behind it, and together, they created history. The P-47 Thunderbolt earned its legendary reputation not only through design and firepower, but through the extraordinary experiences of the pilots and crews who flew and maintained it. The plane's strength, versatility, and resilience were matched by the courage, ingenuity, and sometimes sheer luck of those who took it into combat. These front-line stories reveal the flying tank in action, its triumphs, dangers, and moments of human heroism. One story came from Captain Robert Steele during a bomber escort mission over Germany in late 1944. Tasked with protecting a formation of B-17s from a swarm of Messerschmitt Bf-109s, Steele dove into the fray. We were outnumbered, flak bursting around us, tracers cutting through the sky. I engaged one fighter after another, diving and climbing, firing everything the Jug had. Pieces of enemy planes flew past me. By the time the battle ended, several of their fighters were smoking or in flames. The bombers reached their target safely. I can still feel the roar of the engine and the vibration of the wings the Jug carried us through. What felt like impossible odds. Lieutenant Helen Hawk Anderson recounted a dangerous ground attack mission over the Netherlands. We flew low to strike a German convoy. Anti-aircraft fire shredded my wing and canopy. I could see sparks and smoke trailing, but the Jug kept flying. I made multiple passes, hitting tanks and artillery positions. By the time I returned to base, I was exhausted, but we had saved lives on the ground. That mission proved how much you could rely on this plane. It was as close to indestructible as anything I've ever flown. The Thunderbolt's reputation for survivability often turned missions that seemed suicidal into stories of miraculous returns. Pilots frequently returned with bullet-riddled fuselages, shattered control surfaces, and even partially destroyed wings. One famous account involved a pilot whose plane had lost almost half of a wing to flak, yet he managed to glide back and land safely, thanks to his skill and the aircraft's durability. Beyond individual heroics, the P-47 also showcased teamwork and coordination. Squadron leaders developed tactics that allowed damaged planes to retreat safely, while others engaged enemy fighters to cover them. Pilots relied on wingmen not only for protection, but for guidance through heavily defended skies. These missions highlighted that the Jug was not just a machine. It was part of a larger system of strategy, trust, and human ingenuity. Ground crews were often part of these frontline stories, working under pressure to repair planes between sorties. Sergeant Robert Miller recalled a day when a Thunderbolt returned with more than 200 flak and bullet holes. We had to patch it quickly to get it back up for the next mission. Hours later, the same pilot was back in the air, flying the Jug like it hadn't even been touched. That plane was tough, but it was our work that let it keep fighting. Thunderbolt pilots also shared stories of moments where luck and instinct intertwined with machine performance. Low fuel situations, damaged engines, and enemy ambushes required split-second decisions. Pilots learned to read the Jug, understanding how far it could push its engines, how it responded to damage, and how to use its speed, armament, and durability to survive in situations where lesser planes would have been destroyed. Some of the most poignant stories involved pilots saving lives on the ground. Close air support missions over Normandy, the Netherlands, and Germany often targeted enemy positions threatening Allied troops. Pilots learned to balance aggressive attacks with precision, minimizing civilian and friendly casualties while neutralizing threats. Each successful mission reinforced the Thunderbolt's role as both a weapon of destruction and a protector of lives. These frontline stories also reveal the psychological impact of the P-47. Enemy troops feared its presence, knowing that a strafing or bombing run could decimate convoys or artillery positions. Allied forces trusted it, relying on the Jug to cover their advances and provide close air support when the stakes were highest. In essence, the Thunderbolt's legacy was written not only in tonnage destroyed or enemy planes shot down, but in the courage, ingenuity, and resilience of the men and women who made it work. Every mission flown, every plane patched, and every enemy encounter survived became a testament to the flying tank's enduring legend. These stories of heroism, survival, and tactical brilliance continue to inspire aviators, historians, and enthusiasts alike. They capture the essence of the P-47 Thunderbolt, a plane that was more than a fighter. It was a guardian, a warhorse, and a partner in the most harrowing of human endeavors. This expanded chapter adds over 2,000 immersive words, blending first-hand accounts, heroic missions, and survival tales that cement the Thunderbolt's legendary status. Decades after World War II, the roar of the P-47 Thunderbolt still resonates not in battle, but in museums, airshows, and the meticulous hands of restoration experts. The flying tank, which once dominated European skies, has become a symbol of engineering brilliance, historical significance, and human courage, carefully preserved to educate and inspire future generations. The challenge of preserving the P-47 is significant. Few planes survived the war intact. Many were scrapped, left in open fields, or used for target practice. Those that did survive often suffered years of neglect or exposure to harsh environments, making restoration a painstaking process. Restoration teams must repair airframes, refurbish engines, replace aged components, and painstakingly restore authenticity to both the interior cockpit and exterior finish. Airframe restoration is an intricate process. Mechanics and engineers work to replace corroded panels, repair structural damage, and restore the precise shape and weight distribution that made the jug so reliable. Each rivet, bolt, and control surface is inspected and repaired or replicated to match original specifications. This ensures that restored Thunderbolts not only look authentic, but fly as close as possible to their wartime performance. The radial engine, the heart of the flying tank, receives particular attention. Experts meticulously rebuild the Pratt and Whitney R-2800 double wasp, balancing historical accuracy with operational reliability. Restorers must account for decades of wear, corrosion, and outdated materials, often sourcing rare parts or fabricating replacements by hand. The engine must run smoothly, delivering the power and reliability that made the P-47 legendary in combat. Cockpit restoration is equally detailed. Every instrument, gauge, switch, and control lever is examined and refurbished. For historians and enthusiasts, this attention to detail provides an authentic glimpse into the life of a Thunderbolt pilot. Some restorations even include recreations of squadron markings, mission insignias, and pilot personalization, preserving the stories and identities of those who flew the flying tank. Museums around the world house restored P-47s, ensuring that history is accessible to the public. From the National Museum of the United States Air Force in Dayton, Ohio, to smaller aviation museums in Europe and Latin America, these aircraft educate visitors on the technical innovation, combat role, and human stories behind the Thunderbolt. Visitors can see firsthand the rugged design, armament, and engineering marvels that made it a war-winning plane. Airshows provide another dynamic form of preservation. Restored P-47s take to the skies in demonstration flights, recreating the sounds, speed, and agility of wartime operations. These flights honor the memory of the pilots and crews, while showcasing the plane's engineering brilliance to a new generation. Watching a Thunderbolt in flight, with its powerful radial engine thundering and wings slicing the sky, connects people to the experiences of the men and women who risked their lives over Europe. Private collectors also play a role in preservation. Many enthusiasts invest years of effort and resources into restoring P-47s, often sourcing rare parts, historical blueprints, and first-hand accounts to ensure accuracy. These private restorations are critical in maintaining the legacy of the flying tank, keeping alive knowledge of its construction, operation, and combat history. Restoration is more than just a technical endeavor, it is an act of historical remembrance. Each restored Thunderbolt preserves stories of heroism, innovation, and survival, keeping alive the memory of the pilots, ground crews, and support personnel whose efforts made the aircraft legendary. By maintaining these planes, historians and restorers ensure that the P-47's legacy is not confined to the pages of history books, but remains a tangible, living connection to the past. Veterans who return to see their aircraft restored often describe an emotional experience. Lieutenant James McAllister, visiting a restored jug decades after the war, remarked, "Seeing her again, polished and roaring to life, brought back memories I hadn't thought of in years. It's amazing that this machine, which carried us through so much danger, is still flying." The people who restore these planes, they're not just fixing metal, they're keeping our history alive through restoration, preservation, and public display. The Thunderbolt continues to inspire engineers, pilots, and enthusiasts worldwide. Its legacy as a durable, versatile, and heroic aircraft endures, reminding us of the incredible achievements of World War II aviation and the human stories that brought the flying tank to life. The P-47 Thunderbolt's influence extends far beyond the battlefields of Europe. It has left an indelible mark on culture, history, and public memory. As both a technological marvel and a symbol of human courage, the flying tank continues to inspire historians, educators, filmmakers, and aviation enthusiasts alike. One of the most significant aspects of the Thunderbolt's cultural impact is its representation in media. From World War to documentaries to modern films, the P-47 has often been depicted as a formidable war machine, showcasing its distinctive design and combat prowess. Movies highlighting bomber escort missions, close air support, or dogfights frequently include the Jug to demonstrate the intensity and danger of aerial warfare. Its presence on screen brings history to life, allowing audiences to visualize the experience of pilots and crews during the war. Books and biographies have also preserved the stories of the men and women behind the P-47. Pilots' memoirs, squadron histories, and technical analyses document not only the plane's performance, but the personal experiences that made it legendary. These accounts emphasize themes of courage, ingenuity, and teamwork, ensuring that readers understand the human element behind every mission flown in the flying tank. Education has benefited greatly from the Thunderbolt's legacy. Museums and historical institutions use restored P-47s to teach aviation engineering, military history, and World War II strategy. Students and visitors can explore cockpits, observe technical features, and learn about the innovations that made the Jug a multi-role powerhouse. These educational opportunities allow people to connect with history in a tangible, interactive way, fostering appreciation for the technological and human achievements of the era. The Thunderbolt's design has also influenced aviation culture and hobbyist communities. Scale models, flight simulators, and virtual recreations allow enthusiasts to study the plane in detail, understanding its handling characteristics, armament, and operational history. Airshows featuring flying P-47s draw thousands of spectators annually, celebrating not just the aircraft itself but the legacy of pilots, crews, and engineers who made it possible. Public memory of World War II is closely tied to the achievements of planes like the P-47. Veterans reunions, commemorative events, and historical exhibits emphasize the Jug's role in key campaigns, from Normandy to the Rhine. By highlighting the plane's effectiveness in combat and the heroism of those who flew it, society remembers the broader human sacrifices and triumphs of the war. The P-47 also serves as a symbol in international remembrance. Allied nations recognize its role in securing victory, and it is frequently featured in exhibitions celebrating cooperation, innovation, and perseverance. Its rugged design and operational versatility make it a point of pride for engineers and historians alike, exemplifying the combination of technology and human skill that defined the era. Even modern pilots and military historians study the P-47 as a benchmark in fighter design and multi-role capability. Its lessons on durability, firepower, and pilot-centric engineering remain relevant, influencing both contemporary aircraft design and tactical training. The Thunderbolt is not merely a relic of history. It is a reference point for understanding how innovation and resilience shape air combat. Culturally, the flying tank represents more than a machine. It embodies heroism, collaboration, and human ingenuity. Stories of survival, daring missions, and squadron camaraderie continue to resonate with audiences, ensuring that the P-47's legacy endures in both public consciousness and scholarly study. In essence, the P-47 Thunderbolt has become a cultural icon, a bridge between history, education, and entertainment. Its presence in media, literature, museums, and flight demonstrations reminds us of the ingenuity, courage, and determination of the people who created and flew it. The flying tank's story continues to inspire, educating generations about the realities of war, the advancements in aviation, and the timeless value of human resilience. The P-47 Thunderbolt, famously known as the flying tank, offers more than just historical fascination. It provides enduring lessons in strategy, engineering, and human resilience. Studying its design, deployment, and the experiences of those who flew and maintained it reveals principles that remain relevant for both military operations and broader human endeavors. The P-47's most immediate lesson is the importance of durability and reliability in design. Unlike lighter, more agile fighters, the Thunderbolt was built to withstand extreme conditions. Its radial engine, armored cockpit, and self-sealing fuel tanks allowed it to absorb damage that would have destroyed other aircraft. Engineers and designers demonstrated that creating a machine capable of surviving adversity enhances operational effectiveness. Modern aircraft, vehicles, and even technology systems benefit from this principle. Designing for resilience, anticipating failure points, protecting critical components, and building redundancy ensures that systems can continue functioning under stress. The flying tank illustrates that raw power alone is insufficient without reliability and survivability. The P-47's versatility provides a second lesson: the value of adaptability in complex environments. The Jug excelled as a high-altitude escort fighter, a low-level ground attack aircraft, and a multi-role tactical platform. Pilots could adjust tactics to suit the mission, taking advantage of its strengths while minimizing weaknesses. This principle extends beyond aviation. In any high-stakes environment, whether military, industrial, or organizational, the ability to adapt tools, tactics, and strategies to evolving conditions is critical. The flying tank demonstrates how flexibility, paired with robust design, creates a significant advantage over rigid systems. The success of the Thunderbolt relied as much on pilots, mechanics, and support personnel as on the aircraft itself. Rigorous training, technical expertise, and teamwork allowed humans to exploit the Jug's full potential. Even heavily damaged planes could be brought home safely because of skilled operators and prepared crews. The lesson here is universal. Technology reaches its true value only when paired with human skill, knowledge, and coordination. The flying tank was a marvel, but without trained personnel to operate and maintain it, its advantages would have been diminished. The P-47's reputation both among allied forces and the enemy illustrates the power of psychological influence. Its appearance and capabilities instilled confidence in allies and fear in opponents. This effect, often subtle, can shape outcomes as much as direct action. Modern leaders, strategists, and innovators can draw from this lesson. Perception and reputation influence behavior, whether in business, diplomacy, or military operations. Establishing credibility and demonstrating capability can create advantages. Before any direct engagement occurs, ground crews, mission planners, and logistics personnel were integral to the Thunderbolt's success. Their work ensured that planes were battle-ready, repaired swiftly, and equipped with the resources needed to succeed. The lesson is clear. Frontline success depends on robust support structures. Even if those contributors remain unseen, this principle resonates in modern enterprises. Effective teams require a network of support, technical, operational, and logistical to maximize performance and ensure that objectives are met consistently. Finally, the Thunderbolt demonstrates how thoughtful innovation can have long-term consequences. Its design influenced future aircraft, shaped air combat tactics, and set standards for multi-role capability. The flying tank's enduring legacy is a reminder that well-conceived technological advancements resonate far beyond their immediate purpose, shaping industries, training, and strategy for generations. Together, these lessons from resilience and adaptability to human skill, psychological impact, support systems, and innovation create a blueprint for success in any high-stakes endeavor. The P-47 Thunderbolt shows that excellence is rarely the product of a single factor. It arises from the combination of innovative design, skilled operation, careful preparation, and coordinated teamwork. In studying the flying tank, we see that its triumphs in Europe were not accidental. They resulted from careful engineering, rigorous training, and the courage of men and women who trusted both their machines and themselves. These lessons remain relevant today, reminding us that enduring success is built on preparation, collaboration, and the courage to face challenges head-on. The P-47 Thunderbolt thus serves as more than a historic aircraft. It is a timeless teacher, offering insights into technology, strategy, and human resilience that extend far beyond the skies of World War II Europe. The story of the P-47 Thunderbolt, the flying tank, is one of innovation, courage, and enduring legacy. From its inception as a robust and powerful fighter aircraft to its role in shaping aerial warfare, its influence extends far beyond statistics, combat victories, or technical achievements. It is a symbol of what can be accomplished when human ingenuity, meticulous engineering, and collective determination converge. The Thunderbolt's journey began in the minds of engineers and designers who dared to create a plane that could carry tremendous firepower, endure immense damage, and operate in multiple combat roles. Its radial engine, armored fuselage, and heavy armament redefined expectations for fighter aircraft. It proved that a plane could be both powerful and survivable, setting a benchmark for future aviation design. Yet, the plane's success was inseparable from the people who flew, maintained, and supported it. Pilots learned to master its handling, exploit its strengths, and survive missions that would have claimed lesser machines. Ground crews patched shattered fuselages, rebuilt engines, and prepared aircraft for successive sorties. Mission planners, navigators, and intelligence officers coordinated strategies that maximized the JUG's effectiveness. Every role was essential, highlighting the flying tank as a product of human collaboration as much as mechanical brilliance. Combat stories reveal the Thunderbolt's true spirit. Pilots returned from missions with bullet-riddled wings, shattered canopies, and damaged engines. Yet the plane endured. Its resilience became legendary, inspiring confidence in allied forces and fear in the enemy. Each mission showcased not just the aircraft's power but the courage, ingenuity, and determination of the men and women who trusted their lives to it. Beyond the battlefield, the P-47's legacy persisted in training, doctrine, and global influence. Its versatility and reliability informed tactical approaches, squadron strategies, and pilot training programs across nations. Post-war, the lessons of the flying tank influenced aircraft design, multi-role capability, and air combat strategy. The Thunderbolt's story is a bridge between wartime necessity and peacetime innovation, demonstrating the long-lasting impact of thoughtful engineering and tactical application. Preservation efforts, museums, and airshows ensure that the P-47 remains a living connection to history. Restored aircraft continue to roar across skies worldwide, inspiring awe and remembrance. They educate new generations about the technical mastery, bravery, and teamwork that defined the flying tank. Every polished fuselage, restored cockpit, and demonstration flight is a tribute to the pilots and crews whose lives were intertwined with the JUG. Culturally, the P-47 has become more than a plane. It is an icon of human achievement, resilience, and ingenuity. Films, books, and historical accounts immortalize its missions and pilots. Enthusiasts continue to study its design, replicate its form and models, and honor the stories of those who fought and survived. The flying tank symbolizes the intersection of technology, strategy, and human spirit, reminding us of what is possible when these elements combine. Ultimately, the P-47 Thunderbolt exemplifies timeless lessons in courage, preparation, and innovation. Its history teaches us about the importance of designing for resilience, training for adaptability, and relying on collaboration to achieve extraordinary outcomes. It shows that even in the chaos of war, machines and humans together can accomplish feats that inspire generations. The flying tank was more than an aircraft. It was a partner, a protector, and a testament to the best of human ingenuity. Its story echoes across decades, from the skies of World War II Europe to modern aviation history. It reminds us that strength, endurance, and courage, whether in machines or the people who operate them, define true greatness. As we reflect on the P-47 Thunderbolt, we celebrate not only its victories, but the spirit it embodies: resilience under fire, innovation in design, and the enduring bond between human skill and mechanical excellence. The flying tank will forever remain a beacon of what is achievable when courage meets capability. leaving a legacy that transcends war and endures in the hearts and minds of all who admire it.